A human S-trap caught the herbivorous alien girl. She begged the carnivorous man not to eat her. The planet was quiet. The wind whispered across the barren land, stirring the dust and bending the strange, thin trees that grew in scattered patches. Sunlight burned down, bright and harsh, making the world shimmer in heat waves. In the distance, small mountains rose like jagged teeth against the sky. For most creatures, this land would have been empty and dangerous, but to one human it was home. The man moved carefully over the rocky ground. His boots crunched against stones and dry soil. He was tall and lean, with skin tanned from years under alien suns. His dark hair fell into his eyes, but he pushed it back with a quick swipe of his hand. In his grip, he held a simple wooden spear with metal tips, a weapon he had made himself. Around him were traps, small and large, scattered across the land like a hunter's secret network. He had lived here for a long time, so long that he had forgotten the world he had once left behind. Civilization, cities, machines, and even other people felt like memories from another life. Here, survival was the only law, and every day demanded alertness, skill, and patience. He had learned to read the land, to notice the subtle movements of creatures, and to understand the signs that storms or predators might be near. That morning, he checked his traps as he always did. His eyes scanned the ground, searching for footprints, bent grass, or anything unusual. One trap in particular caught his attention. It was a net trap made with strong fibers he had woven himself. The trap had been designed to catch small alien animals, something herbivorous, usually easy to prepare as food. But as he approached, he noticed something strange. The net was moving. Something inside struggled, its limbs pressing against the fibers, pushing, pulling, twisting. The man froze. He had never seen anything like this. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from sudden curiosity. He crouched slowly, moving closer to the trap. Inside was a creature unlike anything he had ever encountered. At first glance, she looked small and fragile, her body covered with soft, pale skin that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Her eyes were large and round, deep with a color he could not name. They held fear, yes, but also intelligence and something else, curiosity, perhaps, or desperation. The alien girl struggled against the net, her long, thin arms trying to reach him. Her voice came out in a soft, high-pitched tone that he could not understand, but the emotion was clear. She was scared. She was begging. Her gestures were frantic, pointing to herself and shaking her head as if to say, "I am not dangerous. Please do not hurt me." The man's mind raced. He had been a hunter for a long time. He had taken life to survive, but he had never seen a creature like this, so small, so intelligent, so clearly terrified. And yet instinctively his survival training tugged at him, whispering caution. He could eat this creature if he wanted. He could kill it and it would serve him for days, but something held him back. He noticed the way she moved, the gentle way she tried not to harm the net or herself. She did not fight violently. She did not growl or show aggression. She simply wanted to be free. Something inside the man shifted. He crouched lower, keeping his hands visible, showing he meant no harm. The alien girl froze when she saw him. Her large eyes studied his face. Slowly, almost cautiously, she stretched her hand toward him. He noticed her fingers were delicate, almost translucent, with tiny pads that seemed made for gentle touch. She was trying to communicate. He lowered himself even more, matching her gesture, even though he did not know what it meant. Minutes passed. They watched each other. The alien girl tilted her head as if thinking, and then made a series of small, quick movements with her hands and fingers. The man tried to copy them, unsure what they meant. He realized slowly that she was trying to tell him something important. She was not food. She was not an enemy. She was something else entirely, something alive and intelligent. The man sighed quietly. He had expected this planet to be empty of anything truly interesting. He had expected his days to be filled with the simple rhythm of survival, set traps, gather food, stay safe. But now everything had changed. This small, fragile being had entered his life, and he could not simply ignore her. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small container of water. Slowly, he approached the net, keeping his movements slow and careful. He placed the container just outside her reach. She hesitated, then cautiously leaned forward and drank. Her eyes brightened slightly. For a moment, the tension eased. She tried again to speak in her strange tones, making sounds he could not replicate. He listened, tilting his head. He could not understand the words, but he could feel the fear and relief mixed in them. He nodded slowly, trying to show her that she could trust him. Then he noticed something else, her reaction to him. She flinched slightly, but not in the way an animal would. She flinched as if she had been taught to fear predators, to fear harm. Yet she was not cowering completely. She was curious, and her fear was mixed with a strange hope. Perhaps she sensed that he was different. Perhaps she sensed that he was not like the other carnivores she had learned to avoid. The man knelt beside the net, examining it. He realized that if he released her now, she might run into danger or she might leave him forever. He had an idea. Slowly, he untied one side of the net, giving her more space. She froze, unsure what was happening. Her body trembled as the net loosened. Then, almost cautiously, she stepped back, testing her freedom. The man smiled faintly. For the first time in many years, he felt a warmth he had not known in a long while. There was a connection here, fragile and uncertain, but real. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if this small, herbivorous alien girl would survive in this harsh land. But he knew one thing: he could not harm her. She looked at him again, her large eyes searching his face. Then, in a sudden burst of courage, she stepped fully out of the net, standing before him. She raised her hands, palms open, a gesture of peace. The man mirrored her gesture. Slowly, a bond began to form, built not on words but on trust, curiosity, and understanding. The wind continued to blow across the barren land, but now it carried a new presence, a small, gentle life that had stumbled into his world. He wondered what she had seen, what she had left behind, and why she had come here. He could not know yet. All he knew was that he would protect her, at least for now, and learn everything he could about this extraordinary creature. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the land, the man and the alien girl sat side by side near the trap. Neither spoke words the other could understand, yet they communicated in ways more powerful than language. They shared glances, gestures, and moments of quiet observation. Each learned something new about the other. Each realized that this meeting, so unlikely and so strange, had changed everything. By the time the day ended, the man had decided to take her to his shelter. He carefully guided her along the rocky paths, and she followed, cautious but willing. She looked around at the unfamiliar terrain, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. The man noticed her fascination and smiled quietly. She reminded him that there was still wonder in the world, even in a place so harsh and lonely. At night, they reached his small shelter. It was simple, made of stone and wood, with a fire pit at the center. The man offered her some food, plants he had collected, cooked in simple ways. She hesitated, sniffed it carefully, and then took a small bite. She nodded, a tiny smile forming. The man felt a surge of relief. She was safe, at least for now. He watched her sleep that night, curled up gently on the mat he had prepared. Her breathing was steady, and for the first time he felt the deep satisfaction of having saved a life without taking another. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, but inside there was a fragile warmth, a connection between two very different beings, brought together by chance, curiosity, and compassion. And in that quiet moment, the man realized that this small, herbivorous alien girl had already changed him more than he could have imagined. She had awakened something long forgotten, a sense of care, a sense of connection, a sense of hope that even in the harshest places, life could surprise, teach, and inspire. The night passed slowly, with the stars shining over the barren land. Both human and alien slept, unaware of what challenges the next day would bring. But for now, the trap had ended not in fear or death, but in the beginning of something new, a story of trust, survival, and the unlikely bond between a human and a creature from another world. The morning sun spilled across the rocky land, painting the stones with gold and warmth. The air was clearer now than the day before, carrying faint smells of strange plants and distant mountains. The man woke first, as he usually did, alert to every sound. He glanced at the alien girl, who was still asleep, her small body curled in the corner of the shelter. Her chest rose and fell gently, and for a moment he simply watched her. He had never met a creature like her. She was fragile, yet she radiated intelligence. Every movement she made, even while asleep, seemed purposeful. He remembered how terrified she had been when he found her, how desperately she had pleaded for her life. And yet now, she trusted him enough to sleep without fear. That thought made his chest tighten, and he realized that he could not treat her as prey. Not now, not ever. He stood slowly, careful not to make noise. Outside, the wind had settled, and the landscape looked calmer in the morning light. He stepped out, scanning the horizon for signs of danger. His traps were still there, scattered across the land, waiting for small animals to fall into them. He had been ready to leave her alone in the shelter while he went to check them, but something inside him told him that she should see the world he lived in. He returned to the shelter with a small bundle of plants he had collected the day before. He laid them down carefully, then crouched and gestured to her. At first, she stirred but did not wake fully. The man tapped gently on the bundle, then pointed to the plants, then to himself. Slowly, understanding dawned in her large, round eyes. She realized he was offering her food. She blinked, then smiled faintly. It was a shy, hesitant smile, but it was a smile nonetheless. She reached out and touched one of the plants, feeling its texture. Then, cautiously, she tasted it. Her face lit up with surprise and delight. She gestured quickly to him, making sounds that were high-pitched but musical, and pointed to herself and the plant. He shook his head slowly, unsure of her language, but he understood the meaning. She was telling him that the food was good. For hours, they remained like that, communicating slowly, awkwardly, but effectively. He showed her more plants, pointing, tasting, and then letting her try. She mimicked him, learning quickly. Her movements were careful, precise, and intelligent. He noticed that she watched him not just to imitate, but to understand, to learn how he survived. By midday, a pattern had formed. He led her outside, away from the shelter, to show her the land. She followed, moving cautiously but confidently now. She paused often, touching rocks, leaves, and grass, examining everything with curiosity. He observed silently, letting her explore, knowing that the more she understood this world, the safer she would be. She made gestures again, pointing at the distant mountains, then pointing to herself, then to him. He thought she was trying to ask a question. "Yes," he said aloud, though he did not know if she understood. She tilted her head, blinking, then nodded slightly. It seemed she did understand, at least a little. Communication between them was slow, but it was happening. As the day passed, he discovered more about her. She had a long, delicate tail that helped her balance as she walked over rocks. Her skin seemed soft but strong, and her eyes could see details even in the harsh sunlight. She moved carefully, as if she were aware of every danger, every hidden crevice. He realized that she had been raised in a harsh environment, perhaps even alone at times. There was a caution in her movements, a wisdom beyond her small size. The human showed her small things about survival in this land. How to find water, how to recognize edible plants, how to avoid dangerous animals. She watched carefully, absorbing every detail. At times, she tried to do things herself, sometimes failing but never giving up. He could see her intelligence and persistence, and he admired it. By evening, they returned to the shelter. The alien girl seemed more relaxed than before. She no longer flinched at his movements. She even offered him a small gesture, a touch on his arm, tentative but friendly. He did not recoil. Instead, he smiled faintly and nodded. For the first time, he felt that perhaps they could truly understand each other. Night came slowly, the sky painted in shades of deep blue and purple. Stars appeared, scattered across the sky like jewels. The man made a small fire, not for warmth but for comfort, and sat beside it. The alien girl watched him, her eyes reflecting the flames. She made soft sounds again, pointing at the fire, then at herself, then at him. He guessed she was asking about it. He nodded, then pointed to the flames and said, "Safe." She nodded in return, as if she understood. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling gently. He noticed her breathing slow, her body relaxing. She was learning to trust him, and he was learning to trust her. Each small movement, each gesture built a bridge between them. He had never felt this connection before, not even with humans. There was something in her simplicity, her curiosity, and her fear that made him feel responsible, protective. Suddenly, there was a movement outside the shelter. Both of them froze. The man stood slowly, placing himself between her and whatever was there. The alien girl crouched behind him, her large eyes wide with fear. A small animal, no bigger than a dog, appeared from the shadows. It sniffed the ground, then ran past them, uninterested. The man exhaled, and she relaxed slightly. She looked up at him and made soft sounds that seemed almost like a laugh. He smiled faintly, realizing that she was beginning to feel safe here. The next few days passed in a rhythm. The man taught her to move carefully across the land, to watch for hidden dangers, and to find safe plants to eat. She taught him as well, in her own way. She showed him unusual plants he had never noticed, pointed out patterns in the land that helped him predict weather changes, and even mimicked his hunting gestures, though gently, as if teasing him. They developed a routine. Morning walks, learning about food, observing the land. Afternoon rests, sharing food and communicating through gestures. Evening fires, sitting quietly together, watching the stars. Each day, the alien girl seemed more confident. Each day, the man felt less like a hunter and more like a protector. The bond between them deepened. One day, as they explored a nearby stream, she paused and pointed to the water. Then she touched her mouth and pointed to him, mimicking drinking. He understood immediately and handed her a small container of water. She drank, then smiled brightly and touched his hand. He laughed softly, a sound rare and precious on this lonely planet. She seemed fascinated by everything, the way he moved, how he interacted with the environment, how he made simple tools. He noticed her hands, delicate but strong, moving with precision and care. She had skills, yes, but also a mind that observed and calculated. He realized that she was not just a creature to protect. She was a companion, someone who could teach him as much as he taught her. One evening, a strong wind blew across the land, rattling the shelter. The alien girl clutched his arm, her small body trembling. He put his hand gently on her shoulder, reassuring her. She looked at him with wide eyes full of trust. He realized that she had learned something crucial. She had learned that not all beings in this world were threats. She had learned that he could be trusted. Days passed and their communication improved. She developed simple gestures that both of them understood, pointing, nodding, drawing in the dirt. They laughed silently at misunderstandings, at failed attempts to mimic each other. She taught him patience, he taught her survival. Together, they built a small world within the vast, empty planet, a world where trust could grow even in harsh conditions. One morning, the man noticed her looking toward the horizon, her gaze fixed on distant mountains. She made small gestures again, pointing at herself, then at him, then at the mountains. He nodded slowly, understanding that she wanted to explore further. He felt a mix of fear and excitement. Taking her beyond this small area could be dangerous, but he also knew that she needed freedom, understanding, and trust to grow fully. He packed small supplies, preparing for the journey. She watched him carefully, mimicking his movements, learning how to carry items and navigate the terrain. It was a slow, careful process, but it brought them closer. Each step, each gesture, each shared moment of understanding built a bridge between two very different beings. As the sun set that evening, they settled by a small fire. The alien girl leaned slightly toward him, her large eyes reflecting the orange flames. He understood then that this bond was real, fragile, but powerful. He realized that their connection was no longer about fear or survival. It was about understanding, trust, and the beginning of something entirely new. The wind whispered through the mountains, carrying the promise of challenges and discoveries ahead. But for now, the human and the alien girl sat together, two beings from different worlds, learning to survive and communicate, building trust one small gesture at a time. In that quiet moment, the man knew something important. He had found more than a creature to protect. He had found a companion, someone who could change his lonely life into a shared journey. And for the alien girl, he was no longer a threat but a guide, a protector, and perhaps, in time, a friend. The morning light spilled gently over the rocky hills, and the wind carried a crisp freshness that hinted at change. The man awoke first, as he always did, and quietly observed the alien girl. She had slept close to the fire, curled in a small, neat bundle. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the new day. When she saw him watching, she gave a small, shy smile, and in that smile he saw a mixture of trust and curiosity. He stood, stretching his arms, and gestured to her. She rose gracefully, her movements deliberate and careful, like someone who had learned to survive in a world full of dangers. Today would be different. Today, they would explore further from the shelter than they had ever gone before. Both of them felt the excitement of discovery mixed with a quiet caution. He packed a small bundle of food and water, pointing to the supplies and then at her, showing her how to carry a portion safely. She watched carefully, mimicking his movements, placing the items on her small frame with precision. It was remarkable how quickly she learned, and he found himself marveling at her intelligence and patience. The bond between them was growing stronger, not through words, but through shared understanding and small acts of cooperation. They left the shelter and walked along a narrow path that wound between jagged rocks and small patches of resilient plants. The alien girl's tail swayed gently behind her, keeping her balance as she navigated uneven ground. Her eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, noticing details the man had missed. A small patch of edible mushrooms, a thin stream hidden behind rocks, a bird-like creature resting on a high branch. At one point, she stopped abruptly and pointed at a clump of leaves. The man leaned in and saw tiny insects crawling among the greenery. He nodded, understanding that she was warning him about a potential hazard. For the first time, he realized that she was not just learning from him, she was also teaching him. Her knowledge of the land, though different from his own, was valuable. They continued along the path, moving slowly but confidently. As the sun rose higher, the temperature increased, and the landscape revealed new challenges: narrow ledges, deep crevices, and patches of slippery moss. The man was careful, but he noticed the alien girl adapting faster than he expected. She stepped lightly, using her tail for balance, and paused only when absolutely necessary. Her presence reminded him that survival was not just about strength, but about intelligence, observation, and patience. By midday, they reached a small clearing with a pool of fresh water. The alien girl approached the pool cautiously, sniffing the air and dipping her fingers in the water to test its depth. The man knelt beside her, gesturing for her to drink from the container he carried. She hesitated for a moment, then drank carefully. Afterward, she dipped a leaf in the water, tasted it, and made soft, approving sounds. He smiled faintly, realizing that her methods were different from his own, but equally effective. They rested in the clearing, sharing food and water, and observed the world around them. Birds flew overhead, their shadows dancing across the ground while small creatures moved cautiously among the rocks. The alien girl pointed at a distant mountain peak, then at herself, then at the man. He nodded slowly, understanding that she wanted to explore further, to see more of the land together. The thought of leaving the relative safety of the shelter both excited and worried him. As they resumed their journey, the alien girl took the lead. She moved with confidence, guiding him along hidden paths and pointing out signs of life he might have overlooked. At one point, she stopped and crouched beside a small plant, pointing at its roots. He examined it and realized it was a plant with healing properties he had never seen before. She gestured that he could eat a small piece to regain energy. He followed her instructions, marveling at how intuitive and careful she was. Hours passed, and the landscape began to change. The rocky hills gave way to a dense patch of trees, their leaves creating patches of shadow that provided relief from the harsh sun. The man noticed that the alien girl moved effortlessly through the undergrowth, her hands brushing gently against branches and leaves to avoid making unnecessary noise. She seemed to sense the presence of hidden creatures, pausing and listening intently before continuing. Suddenly, she stopped and turned to him, her eyes wide with concern. She pointed at a small opening in the trees, then at herself, then at him. He followed her gaze and saw movement, tiny shadows flitting between the branches, predators of some kind. He could not be sure. He held up a hand, signaling her to wait, and crouched to observe. The alien girl mirrored his movements, crouching low, her eyes sharp and alert. After a few tense minutes, the shadows passed and she relaxed slightly. She gestured for him to follow, leading him along a safer path that avoided the open area. He realized then that her senses were more attuned to danger than his own. She was teaching him to observe, to anticipate, and to trust more than just instinct. Their partnership was no longer one-sided. They were learning from each other, growing together. As evening approached, they reached a small hill overlooking a wide valley. The sight was breathtaking. The valley stretched far into the distance, dotted with patches of trees, streams, and rocks glinting in the fading sunlight. The alien girl stood at the edge, her tail flicking gently, her eyes wide with wonder. She pointed at the valley, then at herself, then at the man. He nodded, understanding that she was inviting him to see it with her. They sat on a flat rock at the edge of the hill, sharing a quiet moment. The alien girl produced a small, smooth stone from her bag and handed it to him. He examined it carefully, then realized it was a symbol, something she had used to communicate before. She made soft sounds, pointing to the stone, then at him, then at the valley. He understood that she was marking the moment, sharing it with him as a memory. He nodded, touched the stone gently, and smiled. Night fell, and the stars began to appear, bright and clear against the dark sky. They made a small fire, enough to provide warmth and light, but not enough to draw unnecessary attention. The alien girl watched him carefully as he prepared the fire, then imitated his movements, trying to learn how to control it safely. Together, they shared a meal, eating quietly and observing the world around them. The man realized how much he had changed. He had started this journey focused only on survival, on living day by day. But now he felt something deeper: connection, companionship, and even a sense of responsibility that went beyond himself. The alien girl was no longer just a creature he had found. She was a partner, someone whose presence had altered the rhythm of his life. As they settled near the fire, the alien girl made a series of gestures, pointing at the stars, then at herself, then at him. He watched carefully, trying to understand. Slowly, he realized she was trying to tell him a story, perhaps about where she had come from or about the places she had seen. He nodded, encouraging her to continue, even though he could not understand every detail. The effort to communicate brought them closer, bridging the gap between their worlds. They talked and gestured for hours, sharing knowledge, emotions, and simple moments of joy. The alien girl pointed out constellations, and he tried to mimic them, making small mistakes that made her giggle softly. They laughed quietly, their laughter blending with the crackling of the fire and the sounds of the night. In that moment, the man realized that life on this planet, harsh as it could be, was now filled with moments of beauty and connection he had never known before. The night passed peacefully, with the alien girl sleeping close to him again. He kept watch, feeling a quiet pride in their growing trust. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, yet she had learned to rely on him as much as he had begun to rely on her. Their bond was now undeniable, built on understanding, mutual respect, and shared experiences. By morning, they prepared to move again, ready to explore deeper into the valley. The alien girl led the way, pointing out paths, warning of obstacles, and guiding him with a confidence that inspired him. He realized that their partnership was not just survival, it was discovery, learning, and growth. Together, they could face challenges, uncover new wonders, and build a connection that neither of them could have imagined before. The day stretched ahead, full of promise and potential. And as they walked side by side, human and alien, the man knew that the journey they were on had changed both of them. They had moved from fear to trust, from strangers to companions, and from isolation to connection. The bond they shared was fragile but strong, a bridge between worlds, a testament to the power of understanding, patience, and care. And in the quiet moments as they paused to rest, observe, or share food, they both understood something important: they were no longer alone. Together, they had discovered not only survival but companionship, learning that even in a harsh and uncertain world, trust, empathy, and cooperation could create something remarkable, something worth protecting, nurturing, and cherishing. The morning air was crisp and clear, carrying the scents of the valley below. The man awoke first, as usual, stretching carefully and scanning the horizon. The alien girl slept near the small fire they had left smoldering from the night before. Her chest rose and fell slowly, calm and steady, but the man noticed a small frown on her face even in sleep. Perhaps she dreamed of strange things from her home world. Perhaps she was aware of the dangers that waited in this unfamiliar land. He stood and moved quietly, gathering small sticks and kindling to revive the fire. She stirred, blinking at the morning light, and smiled faintly at him. It was a small gesture, but it carried meaning, trust, familiarity, and the recognition that they faced the day together. He nodded back, gesturing for her to prepare to move. She rose gracefully, her tail swaying for balance, and mimicked his movements as she packed her small belongings. The plan for the day was simple, yet ambitious. They would explore a narrow canyon in the valley, a place the man had observed from a distance the day before. The canyon promised water, plants, and perhaps even shelter, but it also carried risks. The terrain was tricky, and the walls were steep and jagged. One wrong step could mean a fall, and the valley was home to creatures neither of them fully understood. They began the journey, moving side by side. The alien girl led the way, pausing to point out paths that appeared safe and warning him of loose rocks or patches of slippery moss. Her knowledge of the land was impressive, but it was also instinctive. She had an ability to read the terrain in ways he could not. He learned to trust her movements and her gestures, even when they led him to paths he might have ignored. The canyon grew narrower as they approached. The walls rose high on either side, their surfaces rough and shadowed. Small streams trickled down from the heights above, forming puddles and slick patches on the rocky ground. The man moved carefully, keeping his eyes on every step, while the alien girl danced lightly ahead, her tail keeping perfect balance. She occasionally turned, gesturing for him to follow her path, and he nodded, realizing she had already calculated the safest route. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the sounds of moving water, the wind whispering through the rocks, and the occasional soft tones of the alien girl as she observed the land. Suddenly, she froze. The man stopped immediately, crouching slightly, and watched her carefully. Her ears, if they could be called that, twitched, and she crouched lower, her tail flicking behind her. He followed her gaze and noticed shadows moving along the canyon walls. Not dangerous predators, but small packs of creatures, perhaps scavengers, moving quickly and quietly. The alien girl pointed at him, then at the creatures, then at herself. He understood immediately. They needed to move carefully, stay low, and avoid attracting attention. They advanced cautiously, moving like shadows themselves. The creatures passed nearby, sniffing and scanning, but neither the man nor the alien girl made a sound. She moved with incredible grace, guiding him past obstacles and teaching him subtle ways to step lightly, to hold balance, and to anticipate movement. It was remarkable how much he was learning from her, how much he depended on her instincts, and how much trust had grown between them. As they moved deeper into the canyon, the ground became uneven, and a small stream forced them to climb over slippery stones. The alien girl led the way, balancing effortlessly on narrow rocks and pausing to help him navigate the trickier parts. At one point, he slipped slightly, but she reached out instinctively, touching his arm and guiding him to a safer foothold. He caught himself and looked at her, realizing how instinctive and natural their cooperation had become. Finally, they reached a small opening in the canyon where the stream widened into a shallow pool. The alien girl approached the water cautiously, dipping her hands in and tasting it. She nodded in approval, then gestured for him to do the same. He knelt and took a small sip, noting the freshness and clarity of the water. This was a safe place, she indicated, and perhaps a good spot to rest. As they settled by the pool, the alien girl explored the surrounding plants. She carefully examined each one, sniffing, touching, and occasionally tasting, always alert and precise. She gestured for him to observe certain leaves, which he realized had medicinal properties. He noted everything, silently impressed by her knowledge. Their partnership had evolved. He was no longer just the guide. He was a student, learning to read the land through her eyes. But as the sun climbed higher, a sudden rumble echoed through the canyon. The ground vibrated lightly beneath their feet. The alien girl froze instantly, her large eyes scanning the walls above. Rocks began to shift, tiny pebbles tumbling down as the rumble grew louder. She grabbed the man's arm and tugged him toward a small overhang in the canyon wall. He followed without hesitation. They reached the overhang just as a small landslide began, rocks crashing into the pool below with loud, echoing clinks. The alien girl crouched low, pointing at him and then at herself, indicating that they needed to stay still and quiet. He nodded, holding his breath as he watched the rocks tumble past. Her instincts had saved them. Once the danger passed, they cautiously stepped out from their shelter. The alien girl pointed toward the canyon's edge, signaling a safer path. He followed, now fully aware of how much he depended on her instincts, how much trust had grown between them, and how much their partnership mattered. They moved carefully, side by side, navigating the remaining obstacles until the canyon began to widen again. The afternoon sun bathed the widened canyon in gold. They paused to rest, sharing food and water. The alien girl made soft sounds, pointing at the landscape and then at him. He nodded, realizing she was explaining what they had just navigated, sharing her understanding. It was a moment of connection, learning, and mutual respect. They had faced a challenge together and survived because they had trusted one another completely. As they continued, the alien girl occasionally stopped to point out small, hidden details, tiny plants, tracks of other creatures, and patches of loose rocks. Each time the man observed carefully, noting the lessons she offered. He realized that she had taught him to slow down, to pay attention, and to respect the world around them in ways he had never considered. By late afternoon, they reached a small plateau overlooking the valley below. The view was breathtaking. Streams wound through the landscape like ribbons of silver, and patches of green plants glimmered in the sunlight. The alien girl pointed at the horizon, then at herself, then at the man. He understood immediately. She wanted to show him the beauty she had discovered, to share this moment with him. They sat together, side by side, watching the valley stretch into the distance. The alien girl picked up a smooth stone and handed it to him. He examined it, realizing it was her way of marking the day, the journey, and the shared challenge they had overcome. He smiled and touched the stone, acknowledging her gesture. It was a simple act, but it carried immense meaning, a symbol of their trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they prepared to camp. The alien girl gathered small sticks for a fire, while he set up a simple shelter using rocks and branches. They worked silently but in perfect coordination. Each action complemented the other, showing how their partnership had grown through challenges and shared experiences. Night fell and stars appeared across the dark sky. They made a small fire, not too bright, just enough for warmth and comfort. The alien girl watched the flames carefully, her eyes reflecting the light. She gestured toward him, pointing at the fire, then at herself, and then at the surrounding landscape. He nodded, understanding that she was marking the lesson of the day. Survival required awareness, cooperation, and trust. They ate quietly, sharing the small meal they had carried. The alien girl produced a small piece of edible plant and offered it to him. He accepted, smiling, and she mimicked his gesture, sharing a taste of her world. This simple exchange symbolized the deepening connection between them, the way they had learned to care for one another and share knowledge. As they settled to sleep, the alien girl leaned slightly toward him, her tail curled around her body. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, a gesture of reassurance and protection. Outside, the wind whispered through the canyon, carrying a sense of quiet triumph. They had faced danger, navigated challenges, and survived together. Their bond had grown stronger, forged through shared experience, trust, and cooperation. In the quiet of the night, the man reflected on how much he had changed. He had begun this journey alone, focused only on survival. Now he realized that life could be shared, that trust and cooperation could create something far more meaningful than mere existence. The alien girl had taught him patience, observation, and respect. She had shown him that companionship could turn fear into understanding and challenges into lessons. The alien girl, in turn, had learned to rely on him fully. She had faced the unfamiliar and dangerous terrain with courage, knowing that he would support her. She had learned that not all creatures in this harsh world were threats, that some could offer protection, guidance, and friendship. Together, they had become more than companions, they had become partners. Each had strengths that complemented the others, and each had learned lessons that could not have been taught alone. Their journey had changed them both, preparing them for the adventures, discoveries, and challenges that still lay ahead. And as they slept, side by side, the canyon seemed to hold a quiet promise. The bond they had forged through cooperation and trust would guide them through whatever trials awaited, proving that even in a harsh, unpredictable world, understanding, empathy, and partnership could create something extraordinary.